Afinal, numa Europa de grandes metrópoles, o que são os aeroportos regionais? A União Europeia entende que se trata de todos os aeroportos que não são de escala e cuja zona de influência não é a capital do país em que se localizam. Percebido? Então, estes aeroportos permitem a criação de atividades económicas importantes nas regiões onde se localizam e até a criação de cidades aeroportuárias regionais, mas com um impacto importante e significativo. Fruto da pandemia, em 2022, 193 aeroportos europeus, sim, 193, estavam em risco de declarar insolvência. Um risco gigante para as economias locais e, por consequência, nacionais. E se voarmos um bocadinho mais longe, para a economia europeia. Um desafio ultrapassado que deixa tantos outros para o futuro, como a procura pela sustentabilidade, que se tornou nos últimos anos uma preocupação crescente em quase todos os setores. E o da aviação não é exceção. Para nos falar sobre estas estruturas regionais, eu chamo ao palco o Chair da British Aviation Group, Tim Walder. Hi, Tim.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you. The stage is yours, Tim. Thank you.
Boa tarde, senhoras e senhores, e muito prazer. And that's where my Portuguese stops, I'm afraid. It's absolutely wonderful to be here and to hear some of the great debates that have gone on so far, including the last one, which really picked up on some of the environmental issues, but also to be able to see that we've heard from the airlines, we've heard from the airline manufacturers, we've also heard from the tourist side as well. We've heard a little bit about the airports as well. So what I'm going to pick up on today is what can the airports begin to think about in terms of sustainability. And also, I'm so excited to have seen not only the conference talks today, but all the young students coming here as well, and everyone inspiring them to be able to come into our industry. Okay, right, well, let's get going. So, brief introduction, which we've already done, so we'll go through that quite quickly. And then I'm going to pick up on some trends in the aviation sector in terms of the airports. What's important then to regional airports? What are we seeing them talk about and think about in terms of getting more sustainable and enjoying that passenger journey? And then what are we going to do about it? How can we start to think about becoming more sustainable in our operations? Okay. We'll go past that bit. So really what's important to understand is how are we coming back? What is the recovery really focused on? And we heard just now that 4% is the problem that aviation is for our world sustainability and climate change. We can't keep talking about the 4%. We've got to move on. We've got to start to think about what else as an industry can we do. And we need to be more resilient. We saw during the pandemic we struggled a bit. We need to come back greener. We need to come back using digital technology to help the passenger journey and to help the airports themselves. And we also need to think of that overall mobility, that urban mobility. As we heard about, connectivity between different cities is so important. And how do we bring that theory from, not from airport to another airport, but from home to destination? What is it that we can think about? The one group that we've not heard much from is the passengers. How many people in the audience have been passengers recently? There's a few hands going up there. The passengers are the people that we need to think about. How are we going to help them have a better journey? So imagine you're a passenger, and I'll play the passenger for now, okay? Hola, João. Como está? Okay. Yeah, I've just got to the airport. The actual journey was horrendous. Oh my God, there was an accident and so much traffic. And when I think about when I actually got here, okay, passenger signage, I didn't know where I was going. I had no idea which direction I was going. Check-in was horrendous. I had to queue for ages. They wouldn't take my bag. I've got to take that on the plane. Now it's heavy. And then when I get through security was so slow. I thought I was going to miss my flight. I'm now in the departure lounge. I've got no time to do any buying of anything. I've no time to pick up a cup of coffee. The toilets are queues. There is so much in terms of a time that I could have used here. But I've lost it all. And I'm going to eat on the plane, and I'm going to go to the toilet on the plane as well. How many people have had that sort of experience? There's a few nods going on around the room in terms of that. And how are we going to start to make that passenger journey a little bit more sustainable, a little bit more easy for people to enjoy that journey? Well, in June, I was at the Passenger Terminal Expo, and I had the privilege of being on stage with the design, engineering, and development conference teams. And it was amazing to hear what common themes were starting to come through in terms of how regional airports and the bigger airports can start to change. So really a sense of place. So what can we do to make our airports feel more comfortable for the passengers to go through? Sense of community. There were airports like Kentucky, European airports as well, that were talking about that community feel, so that people who work around the airports, who work in the airports, can feel that airport community. And that translates into how the passengers feel too. How do we get more operational efficiency? We've got resource challenges at most airports around the world now. So can we use technology to help the passengers' journey, particularly the wayfinding and how they can understand that? Can we use the land more efficiently? And I'll come on to that as well, that are around the airports. A lot of airports own a lot of land. How can we use that more efficiently? How do we create an inclusive design so that the passenger journey, as we are looking to alter and adapt our terminal facilities, how do we make that easier for all passengers with all abilities to get through as well? That's important. How do we build resilience into the assets so that they get more efficient, reduce carbon, use more sustainable fuel and energy to light, heat, and cool our airports? And last but not least, just to pick up on sustainability, there are many different definitions, but the one I'm going to pick up on is there's economic sustainability, so our regional airports need to survive. There is the climate change, environmental sustainability. How do we reduce carbon footprint? How do we keep noise under control? How do we get the air quality better around our airports? And last, the social sustainability. Do our passengers want to come back? These are things which are so important in developing our airports. So I'll pick up on some of the energy points that we need to think about. So we are moving to a carbon-free future. That you heard from the previous panel, there's a real push to be able to get more efficient in how we use carbon. There is a focus, obviously, from the airlines and the airline manufacturers to look at that carbon from SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, from hydrogen, and from electricity. But we need to look at the airports and see how they can become more energy efficient as well. So that's the holy grail. That's the goal, but it is very complex. How do we actually do it? Because our assets are quite extensive. They're probably quite old in many respects in some of the airports. How do we get that efficiency back? So I focused on 3 options that we can start to think about in terms of reducing the carbon footprint of our airports. So longer term, decarbonize our assets. Can we use more efficient ways of using water, for example? Can we use that more sustainably? Grey water being used at airports. Can we also think about heat pumps being used to be able to heat? Can we think about solar electricity to be able to help us begin to look at those points as well? But it takes time. They are expensive assets. There's a lot of capital investment to go into that. So what else can we do? Well, we can look at our airside facilities and the airside vehicles that we've got. Can we use energy efficient vehicles? Can we start to use the electric vehicles? How do we make sure that they can be used sustainably during the day, that they can be recharged at the right places? How do we make sure that we've got the energy in the right place? Because whenever I talk to airports about their challenges, they always say to me there are 2 problems they often have. One is power, and the other one is poo. Getting the drainage right is another area that airports struggle with as well. And why not use that to generate energy? It can be done. And also, airports need to be able to make money. There's got to be that opportunity. Landside, people are driving cars to their airports. There are hotel buses going to and from. There are other vehicles. Can the airports, by using their energy efficiency, supply energy to all the landside vehicles as well? There are other options there that we can take into consideration. So, looking at those options, what actually can we start to think that we can achieve? Okay. So, Dublin Airport, for example, has looked to be able to produce a solar farm that can actually produce about 8% of its energy requirement. That doesn't seem a particular lot when you think about some of the airports around Europe, but Dublin, it rains a lot, an awful lot, so getting solar power is a bit of a challenge. So they are looking hard at what they can do there. Stansted have got permission now to also use solar farm techniques as well to grow their own ability to generate their own energy. And if we look, though, further afield in India, the Cochin International Airport in Kerala has actually now, the leader, it's the first to become self-sufficient in energy, and it is selling it back to the grid as well, and it's going to extend too. So we can see these new technologies beginning to come in, and it's great learning for lots of different airports, particularly in the European areas, particularly Southern Europe, where solar energy can be a very powerful tool to be able to generate extra energy. There was actually a point I wanted to pick up as well, that Heathrow Airport, right, uses as much energy as a small city. It's incredible when you think about that, and how that is one of the biggest airports, now back as Europe's #1 in terms of international passengers. It uses the energy of an island in the UK called the Isle of Wight, which I looked up is about half the size of Madeira. So Heathrow is using as much energy as Madeira, half of the size. It's incredible, isn't it? So to finish up and to think about the future, what have we got to do to be able to help these opportunities start to get implemented? Well, the first thing I think is for airports with their support teams to look at that future roadmap. Usually airports can control the assets they've got and understand what the future can hold. They can plan with their business case to bring in new technologies. But it's not always within their gift to know what's coming. As we saw from the recovery, and people have said in earlier panel debates, we thought it would be till 2025 before the industries come back. It's now almost back to where it was. And this has taken airports by surprise. They're now looking at their master plans. They're looking at their development. How do they build in more sustainable solutions? How could they begin to think of this now, and using forecasts for the future, what can they do with their future assets? How can they revamp and make resilient their existing assets? So when we look at what are the potential areas that we need to focus on, there are 4 propositions that we've looked at with our airport clients to say, how do you begin to set that roadmap out for the future? The resilience, as I said, how do you use your assets? Airports have got air bridges, they've got escalators, they've got lifts, they've got baggage systems. All of those need to be as efficiently operated as possible. Can you use maintenance regimes that start to think about energy efficiency within them? Do you have to have them running all the day? Can you make it efficient during the day to be able to use them? The passenger journey, can we use digital technology? Can we use signage to be able to make it more efficient so we can reduce staff numbers? As we know, when we start to go through security, we see massive, massive challenges in terms of the staffing of those facilities. How do we transform the airports using those areas for energy efficiency, energy generation, creating airport cities where businesses can operate close by as well in an efficient way, and we see in Iceland them doing that near Reykjavik as well. And finally, what's the future? Are we going to see the electric planes coming in? How do we prepare for those as well? Thank you very much for listening. Really enjoyed it.